So, welcome to the next edition of the Beyond the Blade podcast. We are with Lisa Massaad. She's the senior director at NewMedical Technology, a business development, and I'm sure she can give us much more information about her background in terms of NewMedical and her involvement with the company. NewMedical is the parent company for Silagen, and Silagen has been my number one go-to scar therapy program since starting my practice over 7 years ago. And so we wanted to take this opportunity to bring Lisa onto the show and to really provide a lot of information to our audience, including colleagues, other plastic surgeons, of friends of mine, my patients, maybe prospective patients or interested listeners about the whole topic of scar therapy. We want to dispel a lot of the myths also that are out there regarding the use of different products. So welcome to the show, Lisa. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Excellent. So let's start the conversation and maybe tell us a little bit about who you are, maybe your background, and how you got involved in this world of scar therapy.
Sure. I spent a lot of years in the pharmaceutical side of the business. And in 2006, I believe, I made the jump to the aesthetic side of the business. I started with a different company, but my first product that I worked on there was a silicone scar gel. So I've been working with scar products with one company or the other for almost 20 years now. And I've been with NewMedical now for 10 years. And when I came on board, my mission was to launch Silagen, is to build these products to be the best that they can be, and then get them launched out into the market. So we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary.
Wow, that's phenomenal. That's fantastic. Let's talk about the nuances of Silagen, and let's talk about what's out there in the market. I'll tell you, I have a lot of conversations with my patients who are very interested in, how do I improve my post-surgery scar? Now, there's a lot more that's out there nowadays, but let's start with the foundation. And for me, Silagen has been part of that foundation. Can you talk to us a little bit about the ingredients in Silagen and the research behind it?
So with Silagen, we have two main categories. We have topical gels, which come in an airless pump, and you just spread on like you would your skincare products. And then we also have adhesive sheeting, which is a little bit different for a lot of people. They're not used to seeing something like that, but it's essentially like a patch that you put over the scar. And for our gels, we have one that's 100% medical grade silicone. We refer to it as Silagen Pure. And then we have another version that has zinc oxide sunscreen. So that gives it an SPF of 30. Zinc oxide is a mineral sunscreen. It's very safe. It's got the broadest spectrum of coverage of any of the sunscreens out there. And there is definite clinical evidence that shows getting sun on an immature scar negatively affects the way the scar ends up looking. If you get a sunburn, that is, inflammation. Inflammation makes scars worse. The young scar is much more prone to hyperpigmentation because your body's trying to protect that fresh little fragile skin from the sun's rays. So you get hyperpigmentation. So anything, and I think, for your patients in Miami in particular, if you're out in the sun, you need to be using something that is protecting your scar from the sun. And it doesn't have to be just on beach days. It can be, taking your dog for a walk, going to get the mail, walking to and from your car to work every day, standing at a bus stop, anything like that, is a cumulative thing, and you need protection from that. The sheeting is kind of unique in that like I said, it's an adhesive strip. We have two different backings. We have a clear backing and we have one that's kind of a beige color. And these adhere over the scar, and they're kind of nice for especially for certain surgeries, like especially abdominoplasty, C-sections, and all of that, because the nature of that silicone, it gives you that protective level. You don't feel like your scar is like so vulnerable. There's a little bit of cushion to it. And people tell us they feel like when they have that on, like they're kind of glued together, that they're not like worried about their stitches coming apart or anything. And it also helps prevent any irritation from your pants or your clothing or anything like that. So, and the sheeting in particular works very well if someone has a scar already that they don't like the appearance of. Maybe it's a raised scar, maybe it's a very angry red looking scar, that has healed that way. Sheeting is excellent at helping to reduce the color and flatten out older scars as well.
Excellent. That's great information. Tell us how Silagen was developed, like how it came onto the market, and maybe a little bit more about the active ingredients, because this is going to really tie
Sure.
into a lot of the myths that are out there.
Right. So let's take a step back and talk about silicone itself. So silicone has been used on scars since the 1980s. They started using it on burn scars initially, and it was kind of a serendipitous thing that they actually found that they had used some silicone sheeting that had holes in it, and they found that every place when they took it off the patient, you could see the holes, that anything where that was under the silicone healed really well, but you could see the little dots from the holes. And so somebody said, maybe there's something to this silicone. They started, experimenting with it. And in the early 2000s, we made that move to the topical silicone gels and proving that they're as effective as what the sheeting is. And in 2008, Dr. Tom Musto out of Northwestern University in Chicago, he wrote a paper where he really dug into the mechanism of action of silicone. And ever since then, 15 years later, or excuse me, yeah, 15 years later, it is still considered to be the accepted mechanism of action. Like, how in the world does this work? And it's kind of neat in that what happens when you have you make an incision, and we're talking scar prevention here, not necessarily scar treatment, but you make an incision, you stitch it back up, and then your body works to fill in that gap, to bind those two sides together without the benefit of the stitches. Well, it's kind of like picture in Miami when you have a hurricane, right? What happens? The roofs are leaking? What do? Blue tarps everywhere, right?
Right.
You see blue tarps everywhere. That is a fix, but it's a temporary fix. That's not going to last long term, but it gets the job done for now. That's kind of what your body does when it does that first initial healing. So it builds some collagen in there, but it doesn't have the tensile strength. It doesn't have all of the features of what it will eventually mature into. So what happens is that area of new skin just doesn't work as well as the rest, and it lets too much water evaporate from it in many cases. What happens when you let too much water evaporate, your body is always trying to get things right. You're hot, you sweat. You're cold, you shiver, and the hair stands up on your arms. So with this, your body is trying to normalize this and say, hey, we've got a leak in the roof. We need to plug it up. We're letting too much water out of here. And so it sends signals for your body to build a whole bunch more collagen in that point. And so what can happen is, if you're not treating it, you can end up with this thickened area of collagen that makes that lumpy scar that we see quite often. When you use silicone over the scar, it's gas permeable, so it's not completely occlusive. You put it over, and what it does is it prevents that water from evaporating out of that new scar tissue. And when the water doesn't evaporate, there's no signaling for extra collagen production, and it basically tricks your body into thinking it's business as usual. This is normal skin, and we're just going to do normal collagen deposition, and you will get a more rapid healing of the scar, and you will get a better aesthetic outcome of the scar, because you're not signaling for any extra collagen production at that time.
Exactly.
And so that's medical grade silicone. There's two kinds there's silicone that's like a cosmetic grade, there's silicone that's industrial grade, there's silicone that's medical grade. Medical grade silicone goes through an extra testing processes, because medical grade silicone can actually be used in things that are implanted into the body. So there's a lot of testing that it goes through. So you want to make sure that anytime you're using silicone, you use a medical grade silicone. And in general, clinical recommendations on scar management have been published first in 2002, and then updated in 2014, and they're working on an update again. But consistently since then, the international clinical recommendations published as the opinion of a conglomerate of scar experts from around the world, they agree that silicone is the best treatment to use to prevent and treat scars, especially in the early phases. So it's got the medical background to it, and there's really no other topical products that have good evidence for efficacy. And from 2008 to 2014, nothing changed. So those products had all been out there, but they still aren't recommending them.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Let's talk about some of the myths that my patients bring to us into the practice. And a lot of them, they just want, oh, can I use these like vitamin E capsules that I'm gonna pop open and squeeze on my scar? Is that gonna be okay? Or cocoa butter or coconut oil, or all of
Yeah,
these off shelf, big box store type
sure.
products that they're very well known. They've done a very good job in their marketing over the years, but you flip the label over and you look at the active ingredient, and some of these have like onion extract, or all kinds of interesting ingredients that I've never heard of. So let's maybe debunk some of the myths regarding that.
That when I first started selling scar products, I would go to meetings like plastic surgery meetings, dermatology meetings, and I would get asked probably 25 times a day at least, how does this compare to Mederma? How does this compare to Mederma? And I used to like launch into this pitch about, well, this is this. And so, but I stopped doing that because I looked at the doctors and I said, well, what do you think of Mederma? Do you like it? And they would say, no, I don't think it works good. I'm like, okay, we're on the same page. Let me talk about why. And the good news is that I've been to ASPS, ASAPS, AAD, all these meetings year after year, and I haven't had a doctor ask me how it compares to Mederma in probably more than 5 years.
Yeah.
Which, kudos to everybody understanding the whole scar process. And this goes back to, you doctors are reporting to the diploma on the wall in your office and saying, I went to school for this. I know, I've done the research, I've read the studies, your neighbor, your aunt doesn't know what I know. And so please listen to me. Otherwise, they're going to spend a lot of money and nothing's going to happen to their scar.
Yep.
So you have products like onion extract in Mederma. You have bio oil out there, which is just a bunch of different botanical oils. They claim it works for wrinkles, for stretch marks, for scars. Sounds too good to be true. Usually it probably is too good to be true that one thing can do so much for everything.
Mhm.
So definitely those types of products that are over the counter, they're essentially glorified moisturizers, and you do want to keep that scar moisturized. You want to keep that the water content high, but it's not going to provide that occlusiveness or that that reduction in transepidermal water loss as much as what silicone would. And most of those do not have sunscreen in them. I think Mederma may have one, but I don't think they have mineral sunscreen in theirs. I think it's a chemical sunscreen, but I could be wrong on that. So forgive me. But the other thing is the vitamin E, and this has gone on for a long, long time. And a lot of people use vitamin E capsule or something like that. And note that capsules are supposed to be used to take it orally. They're formulated to be swallowed and for your body to use them internally. They're not made for topical use. And there was a clinical study done by a couple of prominent dermatologists, Leslie Bauman and James Spencer, a while back, and they actually looked at vitamin E on scars. And their conclusion was, due to the amount of contact dermatitis and irritation that they were seeing from vitamin E use, they said that not only may it not help scars, it can potentially make them even worse, because one of the big no-nos with scars is prolonged inflammation, because the more inflammation that you have in that scar, the more likely it is to have a poor outcome. So you have vitamin E, even vitamin E oils, so many sensitivities to that product. And if you have a reaction to it, you're really going to take 4 steps backwards in your scar maturation journey.
Yeah, no, those are excellent points. I mean, I've seen everything under the sun that patients bring in their
Yeah.
bags and their purses, and oh, my sister said this
Yeah.
could work, or my daughter said
Mm-hmm.
this. Yeah, and that inflammatory reaction from some of the chemicals that are in these other products can be a major problem for us as plastic surgeons to handle that post inflammatory reaction. It can be very
Yeah.
prolonged, and it can lead to a much worse outcome, a much worse scar. One of the common questions that we get, I think you touched upon this earlier, but I want to emphasize it. Some of our patients ask, well, what's better? Should I be taping my scars, or should I be doing
Mm-hmm.
the gel? I
Sure.
tend to do, in all honesty, I tend to do a little bit of a hybrid approach. There
Mm-hmm.
are some areas of the body that are easier to tape, hence the abdominoplasty that you mentioned
Yep.
earlier. That's a good one. But sometimes you get into like the inframammary fold or the crease below the breast, and it could be a
Mhm.
little bit dicey there sometimes.
Yep.
And so sometimes we use gel in certain areas. Talk to us about the efficacy, what the recommendations are from
Mhm.
from your side.
So believe it or not, silicone gel, Silagen products are all registered with the FDA as a class 1 exempt medical device. And I know that it's not really just a cosmetic product. It has been gone through this clearance process by the FDA. And you say medical device, it's not a device. We think of a machine or a crutch or something like that, but it's anything that can help being used topically or with outside of the body without being absorbed into the body that can create benefit. And so like dental floss and band-aids also are class 1 devices because they don't go into your body, but they provide a benefit and help your body do what it needs to do even better. So the sheeting was the first one to get their class 1 clearance. And then when the gels came along, there were clinical studies that were done and they had to prove that they were equally as effective to be able to get that FDA clearance. And the studies showed that they are equal equivalency. And in the international SCAR recommendations, they say, that they are equal in equivalency and patients may be more likely to comply with the topical gels. So maybe the gels are preferred because it always goes back to, people say, well, will this work? And I say it will work if you are consistent and persistent. It has to be, on the scar for it to be doing anything. So you can't use it, every other day or, twice a week or anything like that. You're wasting your money. You need to be using it every day as directed, because if it's not physically on that scar, you're not blocking that excess water loss. So you have to use it religiously. And, it's a personal preference. I think that anything that's on a body area that's exposed to the sun, I would definitely use the silicone gel with SPF just for the reasons we talked about. Sheeting can be tricky. I mean, it would be hard to put sheeting on an elbow or on a knee or someplace where it's constantly bending. And where we have a lot of curved surfaces, like under a breast. We do have a breast kit, but yeah, it's a little trickier to get that, to kind of conform to the groove under the breast. But again, with the tummy tuck and things like that, it can be a comforting thing. And I also think this is, more anecdotal, but from what we've seen, and we have a boatload of before and after photos and case studies from patients. From what I've seen, if you really want to make a difference on a really yucky older scar, you should start with the sheeting, because that seems to have the most efficacy in fixing an older scar. If we're talking scar prevention, using it, following your surgery, following any procedure, any injury, any burn, when you do that, I think the topical gels are probably more intuitive to use. People are more comfortable using them. And again, if they'll use it, that's what's the important thing.
Absolutely. A couple questions that we get a lot. How long should they be using these products, for example? What are your recommendations on that?
So with the gels, we recommend you use them twice a day. For the sheeting, we recommend that it's worn at least 10 to 16 hours a day. I mean, we have people that use it more than that, but at least a minimum of 10, I would say 10 to 12 hours, but we say, 10 to 16 hours on our packaging. You want to be using it. Like I said, the maturation process, that immature skin that you just filled in that gap with. Over time, your body will convert that type of collagen, type 3 collagen, to type 1 collagen, but it doesn't happen overnight. Scar maturation to be full tensile strength to, normal, if you want to call it, skin can take as much as a year to 2 years. So what we know is, especially with scar prevention, if you can use that consistently for 3 months, for 90 days, you're going to have a much better chance of getting your scar through that early maturation process and getting it on the right path to good maturation and a good appearance. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want nobody to think we had anything done, right?
Yeah,
No evidence.
exactly. I typically recommend 6 months of use, but is there any data to back that up?
That's I don't know if there's. I know that a lot of people use it for longer, and I have a lot of plastic surgeons that choose to use it longer. And again, you're looking for a really good aesthetic outcome,
Yeah.
which is the whole point of this person paying for, these surgeries. So I don't think I know for sure there is no harm in long-term use, because it's like wearing a Band-Aid for 6 months. You know what I mean? It's not going to do anything to you as long as you're using it properly.
Yeah.
It's fine. There's no safety issues with using it longer. And we even, we do say if it looks like your scar is continuing to show improvement, to keep using it. So I would say that 3 months is kind of like the minimum, more or less, but you can definitely use it for longer than that. Sometimes it helps keep that scar area kind of isolated and allow it to heal without any rubbing on clothing or exposure to, perfumes and all this kind of stuff that can cause irritation.
When would you say the ship has sailed? Like this is it. Like you come in, I have a patient with an older scar, and they say, "Hey, I heard about Silagen. I wanna use this." When would you say, "Hey,
Right.
look, this is not gonna do much of an improvement for you"?
Well, I think it's a matter of expectation setting. So no matter what a scar is a scar. We're never going to make it disappear. But what's interesting is that there's clinical studies that have been done that talk to patients about their scar. And I think a lot of the doctors expect that the patients are expecting a mirror, like that the scar is going to go away on an older scar. But the data shows that even a small improvement in that scar, patients are good with. They just want some improvement. They want it to look a little bit better. So if you're managing expectations, there is data on scars up to 4 years old that I have seen where there has been improvement in those kind of scars. Anecdotally, I have seen scars much older than that. We had one of our sales reps had a 10-year-old hip replacement scar. And we give away these little sample strips, and he looked at his scar, and he thought, what the heck, let me try it. 10-year-old scar, he put it on half of it, and after only a few weeks, the difference in coloration, the untreated side was very kind of purplish, and it was so much faded in the other side. And his scar was flat and soft, but it definitely had a discoloration to it. So, anecdotally, I have seen, we've had doctors that tell us they used it on a 20-year-old scar and it helped. It's not going to make it disappear, but can it help fade it? Yes. Can it help soften it a little bit? Yes. Is it going to work for a huge keloid? No, it's not going to work for a huge keloid. Can it help prevent that keloid? Yes. Can it help prevent a keloid from recurring after you've had scar revision surgery? Most definitely. And that's what's also in the clinical recommendations on scar management. So, it's if the patient's willing to try it, there's no harm in trying. And especially with the red scars, the more discolored the scars, I think the older you can go and still get some benefit from it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Lisa, for jumping on the call today.
You're welcome.
We really appreciate all the information, all the insight. We'd love to have you back on because I think we can really, touch upon a lot of other topics. But thank you so much for being with us, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you. Hopefully in Miami.
Yes, that would be great. Bye. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So nice to meet you.
You too.